We've been challenged a lot. We've been faced with a lot of adversity, frankly, in the last few years. But I believe there's a great opportunity for us to show that this is the reason that you're involved in the bar. That joining together, standing up for the rule of law, saying what the rule of law is. Some people use that term for things I don't think most of us in the profession would agree is the rule of law. And so defining that for our fellow citizens and talking about those issues, sometimes this may be the most important time ever to be part of the ABA and the profession as a whole.
Welcome to another episode of Leading the Bar. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, and with me as always is Patrick Pallas, NCBP President. In this episode, we talked to Jonathan Cole, Chair of the House of Delegates of the American Bar Association. Patrick, this one was exciting.
It was fun because it's not very often that you get somebody on the show who has like the inside secrets, like the people who know things that nobody else knows. And we got a chance to get a peek inside of ABA leadership.
Well, and lucky for us, Jonathan has been a leader at almost every level that you could be in a bar association. So he literally has seen it all. And he talked all about how that informs his decisions with the American bar, but also how much he loves NCBP.
You had some great questions, and we had some fun with, I don't know about you, but heading into this, I kind of wanted to know, how do you get to be chair of the ABA House of Delegates? And, I was also curious about his thoughts now that he's a past NCBP president and a past bar president. What did that do for you? What did that mean? Did that help you in your leadership path? How did it make you a better leader, right? Anyway, he answers all these things, and I thought the way that you enticed it out of him, marvelous, incredible.
Well,
you should be a
spoiler
secret
alert,
agent.
it helped him a lot.
You just cut into the chase. You still need to listen to the podcast because there's a lot of great information.
In case you're wondering, he's
Yeah.
going to end up saying NCBP was helpful for him.
Yeah, well, big surprise, right? It's not too much of a spoiler. Anyway, looking forward to everyone hearing this. Now that we've done it, I'm pretty excited to let the world hear this conversation.
And the annual meeting is up in 2 weeks, and so if after you hear this, you want more of Jonathan, more of Patrick, more of me, come visit us in Chicago at the annual meeting. But for now, let's listen in. Today, we're joined by Jonathan Cole, Chair of the House of Delegates of the American Bar Association. Jonathan has held leadership positions at all levels. He's a past president of the NCBP and the Nashville Bar Association. He's been a staple in the American Bar Association for years, serving previously as the chair of the Standing Committee on Bar Activities and Services, chair of the American Bar Endowment, chair of the ABA Young Lawyers Division, and much more. Based on his resume, if there is a leadership issue your bar is facing, he knows how to solve it. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you. Great to be here.
We want to start with the initial question we ask everybody. Why did you want to be a lawyer?
Well, the simple answer is I want to make a difference. But I'll tell you, I studied history when I was in college at Georgetown, and you read the history books, and they're filled with kings and generals and lawyers. And so since I was an American and wasn't going to go in the military, it seemed like a lawyer was my best route to try to contribute something in my community and my society. So that's why I've looked to it. Incredible how lawyers have really made a difference, both in our history's past and actually throughout history. And so that's why that's what drove me to law school.
Well, you were president of NCBP 10 years ago. What was the biggest issue facing bar associations at that time?
Well, we had a big issue at the time of getting people to be engaged. Frankly, it's still an issue that we have these days. But making sure that people were looking to the bar to spend their energies, their time, to work together to make a contribution to their own community.
So let me ask you this, because, becoming the chair of the House of Delegates is one of those jobs that very few people ever get a chance to ascend to. And you've made it to that path. I'm wondering if you can just kind of share your path, and maybe that says something to those who are listening, should they have similar ambitions to be more like you or to find a path that looks more like yours? What kind of advice do you have for people who say, I want to be chair of the house? How do I do that?
Well, the important thing is to get involved and do things that you feel passionate about. I know people that have said, I want to be president of the ABA or chair of the House or some other position, which is very worthwhile. But sometimes, if you're just trying to make it up to a position, you may have to do things that, that you don't, that don't really drive you, that you don't have a passion for. And so I've not had a clear cut path. I've always tried to get involved in things that I really believed in and things that I thought I could make a contribution and make it a little bit better. And so I'll tell you, I got involved, and my first position was in my state. And then I went to a meeting, and they said, "Hey, we need somebody to go to the ABA Young Lawyers conference." So it was in Milwaukee, and I thought, well, I've never been to Milwaukee. It sounds like fun. And I had a great time, meeting lawyers from around the country. People were really passionate about what they were doing, what their young lawyer section or division was doing in their own state. And it really drove me to want to be involved. And so I went to the next meeting and continue my involvement in the ABA after that. And I eventually became chair of the Young Lawyers Division, which I love. That was great to work with young lawyers from all across the country and try to develop programs and share ideas. And then I actually didn't pursue a position myself in my local bar, the Nashville Bar Association. They actually had kind of a secret nominating committee at the time where it got together. You didn't really apply for it back then, and they would just create a slate of lawyers from the community that they thought would be great serving on the bar association board. And so I got approached and asked if I would run for it. And it sounded like a good thing. I always believed in the great things that we had done here locally. And so that's how I got back involved in my local bar. Served there, did somebody from the board that would become the president of the association. I sought that and really had a great time working with lawyers and judges from across the Nashville community. We had several issues. We had flood that happened, kind of like a 1,000-year flood that happened in our community during that year. And so implemented disaster legal services. And then we also had a program to kind of work with people of modest means, the kind of the working poor, those who make, just enough money to get by, but not enough to hire a lawyer. And so some of those things, frankly, I picked up from NCBP. I started going to NCBP meetings and picking up ideas and things that were happening around the country. And so there's some things that I planned for, like the Modest Means program, and things that I didn't, like the flood. And both those kind of the things I did plan for and those that were thrust upon us, I looked to the NCBP and the ABA to help me get through those years. And so it was that opportunity kind of to take on things that I hadn't planned for, but really meant a lot to me personally. And then I think that I made a little bit better and stuff by my time being in leadership for it.
Well, let me just dig into that just a little bit more. And I'm wondering, again, for people who want to have a path and chart a path to leadership, would you say, and I'm going to let you divide this in any way you like, that your path was purely organic, that your path was more strategic, or as we had a podcast with Nate Alder about, he talked a lot about steward leadership, that it's people who see leadership and try to raise it up, when they are past leaders or merging leaders. How would you say that your ascendancy up to being the chair was affected by those three factors?
Well, frankly, it's almost like a stew, I'd say. All those things kind of come together. I mean, there's a little bit of planning. I got involved. I ran for a seat in the House from Tennessee. So that got me in the policy side of the ABA. But then also, I looked to things and leaders that were really doing something incredible. And Nate's somebody I worked with. Nate and I had been involved in Young Lawyers together. And then kind of saw him as a bar president. And I tell you, it's from leaders from across the country. And that's one thing I really found with NCBP was you had all these individuals who become president of their local or state or affinity bar. They had all kind of been picked by their peers to be a leader. And so you already had an incredible group of people to work with. It's not just, you didn't just sign up. You can't just say, hey, I've been a bar president. I mean, it's somebody who's actually achieved that result in their community. So working with them, that's what inspired me to continue to kind of seek additional positions and things like that in the ABA and kind of across the bar leadership spectrum that prepared me to, to be a better leader. So I think some of it's organic, some is strategic. Sometimes, if there was an opportunity and somebody presented something that I could do and it seemed like I could make a difference there, I took advantage of it and stuff and would agree to do it and spend my time and resources. I try to be careful and not jump in and do too many things. I think it's easy to get involved. And sometimes, between the challenges, you have a local, state, national organization, you could spend all your time doing that and then not do a good job on those and your job. And so sometimes, you got to spend more time on, a case or something like that. But then sometimes you have an opportunity to really get invested in some type of program, some initiative on one of the various bars and try to do a great job with that.
We love the NCBP is my catalyst stories. We collect those stories. Thank you. We'll add one more to our catalog.
Well, it's just a wonderful organization. I just, I can't say enough about it, of just bringing together these great bar leaders around the country to find out what if things are working around the country, some of the mistakes that we can avoid making in other places. It really inspires me, the great leadership that we have in NCBP.
So you were chair of the YLD. How do you entice young lawyers to want to participate in bar associations? They might have time but not interest. They might not know how to do that balance yet. Or how would you describe this to your own children? Because I understand you have an attorney and a law student in the family.
That's right. I think the opportunity to get involved if there's something that's going on in our communities or our nation as a whole, and you don't like it, or that you want to see a change, the way to do it is through the bar association. Each of us can do great work, right? Doing pro bono work and make a difference in somebody's life or in a family's life. And that's really amazing. I've been very involved in pro bono in my firm and in various other circumstances. And so I'm a big advocate of that. But to make real systematic change, to kind of see policy change across the country, or see, the way we deal with people, the way to do that is through the bar association. And I'm a big advocate. Each of the different levels of the bar brings something different to the table. And so I've really been enthused and inspired by the incredible work that you can do on the local basis through your state bar, and then on the national level, through the ABA. And so it's getting involved. And if you want to see things different, if you want to see things improve in our local communities and our national environment, the bar is the way to do it.
Since you mentioned working at a national level, what are you most proud of having accomplished as chair of the House of Delegates?
Well, there's a number of things. I'll tell you, we had a challenge we didn't think we would have, that several states had indicated that there were some concerns. There's some challenges, either from their state Supreme Court or from other elements from their state, kind of questioning whether people should be involved in the ABA, particularly for mandatory bar states. And so it gave us an opportunity to step back, figure out how we're engaging with mandatory bars, what the ABA can do to address any concerns, and make it as hospitable as an environment as possible. And I'm proud to say that, frankly, our relationships with most of the states all around the country are better than they ever have been, in that we've been able to, have that discussion and frank conversation about the things that the ABA could do to make it so that lawyers from mandatory bar states can participate as much as they can. And so that's kind of one of the first things that we didn't anticipate working on, but it's been a wonderful opportunity for us. And then secondly, kind of with the workings of the House. The House is a wonderful institution. It's going to celebrate its 90th birthday this year. It was started in 1936. And so looking at, from the last 90 years, what's really worked? And I appointed a working group to kind of look at the customs and procedures of the House, because just like all of our institutions in our society, we need to make sure that they're responsive, that they are nimble and able to respond and engage with people where they are now and going forward in the future. And so kind of taking apart how the House works, like who gets to speak, how much debate we have, what kind of ceremonies that kind of go on, and figure out, do those work for us going forward? They might have worked in the 1930s or the 40s, but do they really work now? And frankly, so a lot of things that we decided that did work. I appointed this group that was made up of bar leaders from different sections and states and former chairs of the House, to look at this and kind of break it apart. And so, but we've made some subtle changes that have made some fundamental changes, some fundamental alterations on how the House operates. We get to our business faster. The House is operating on a much faster pace than it used to. I've gone around and encouraged states and sections of the ABA to be more engaged, to participate, to bring more resolutions that are kind of germane to the practice of law. And so have seen more people kind of to get involved, to get up and speak about things, and people have appreciated. And so they liked how the House is working and that it's going to be in a better position going forward. And then the third thing is that I initiated a social media campaign to engage with lawyers from all across the country, and frankly, people outside the profession, to talk about what the House of Delegates is. That it's just not this, staid institution that meets twice a year, but it reflects the will of the profession. And the tagline that we use is that the House is the voice of the profession. That's where lawyers from all across the country gather together, not just for one place or one practice area. It's lawyers from practice in the office towers in our biggest cities and then in the squares on our smallest towns. But they gather together to make decisions about where we stand as a profession. And so I believe that and talking about that on social media is trying to bring in that next generation and some of those lawyers from around the country that we haven't engaged with, on platforms in which they are talking about what's important to them. And so that's been very popular and instrumental, I believe, into bringing more people into knowledge about what the House is and how they can be more involved with it.
There's this changing world that we all live in. As lawyers, maybe we'd like to think it's not changing us, right? We are still the same lawyers we took our oath to be and still practice law in a lot of ways the way we always have. But the red states and the blue states and the purple states still have an effect on the House of Delegates. And I'm wondering, in this world of polarization that's even reaching in to make things like the rule of law now somehow political when it clearly is not a political issue, how are you as a leader in this organization bringing people together to find these commonalities, to make sure that everyone is safe to have a discussion, maybe even a debate, and to resolve things as a body of lawyers and not in the world of politics?
Well, it's such an important issue, and I tell you that we talk about the House as a model for our fellow citizens. For that lawyers should be the ones kind of showing the way to have, even when there's differences of opinion. And let me tell you, there's vast differences of opinion within the House. It's made up of
Right.
nearly
Of course.
600 judges and lawyers from all across the country, and some of the most conservative members of our profession and some of the most liberal members of our profession are all involved in the House. But I believe that the thing is that we require, frankly, that we have professional and responsible and honorable debate, that we do things in a way in which we respect the opinions of other people and have that conversation in which we're talking through the differences and trying to find some type of middle ground, or at least take a position and honor the other side, even when we disagree with them. And so some things are worked out, that there's some type of a consolation kind of or a negotiated resolution. Sometimes we have a vote on things, and there's nothing wrong with that as long as we're respectful of those other opinions and allow other people to, everybody has the opportunity to express their where they come from on it. Whether or not it's the newest lawyer who just graduated from law school or the person who's been, was president of ABA 30 years ago. They all had the same right to stand up and say something in the House of Delegates. And we want to hear from that. We want to hear those various perspectives because that's what gets us the best policy, the best decisions that reflect the will of the profession.
Well, if you need another slogan, you could consider "This is your house," or for the bilingual speakers out there, "Es su casa."
I love it.
Feel free
That's
to use
great.
any of those, Jonathan.
Absolutely.
Well, let me just ask a follow-up question to that. As bar presidents, even within our states, there are divides. In Washington, we have an Eastern Washington and Western Washington that have, demographically different political leanings. I'm wondering what kind of advice you have to presidents of bars who are trying to bring their bars together, who are trying to find commonality, who are trying to discuss the important issues of the day that affect the practice of law. What are some of your takeaways as you have been doing this at the national level?
Well, I think one of the important things that bar presidents can do is bringing people together. I believe one of the biggest issues we had today is people who disagree with each other aren't talking or engaging that much as they should. We kind of get in these silos. We're listening to different kinds of news media. It reinforces what you're thinking. And I'll tell you, even if I disagree with somebody, if I can talk to them, preferably face to face, but at least even have a conversation over the phone or virtually, that allows me to at least understand where they're coming from. And we may not agree on it at the end of the day, where what we're talking about. But I think if you can just respect somebody else's position, and have basically an understanding of what their thought process is, that's much better for us overall. And I think bar presidents are uniquely positioned to do that, to bring that conversation together, either in a formal environment like the House of Delegates and the ABA, on a state level or a local level, to sponsor forums or environments in just which people talk one-on-one or even collectively. Any time that we can engage with each other is better for us, both for whatever issues before the day and the next one that's going to come down the road.
So tell us about your love of pro bono programs and why that lives in your heart so much.
Well, it's amazing out there. I don't know about you, but I don't know if I could afford myself. I think that's true, across the board, in our profession. It's really a challenge for us. And so I've seen it uh, throughout my life. I mean, I grew up in an environment where I was just raised by my mother, and she raised my brothers and me and stuff. And so we didn't have some of the best advantages out there. But you could see there's a lawyer who helped my mother, get through some of the biggest challenges that she had, even though my father wasn't paying child support or anything like that. And so I saw it firsthand growing up, but I've seen it since then of getting involved, trying to make things better for our fellow citizens. I did it when I was in law school. With a classmate of mine, we started the first student pro bono program in the state. And then when I got to my law firm, I founded we'd always done some great pro bono work and public service in my law firm, but we didn't have a formal program. And so I think it's very important sometimes to set up those structures to kind of make sure you identify, what pro bono is and, how it differs from public service work, both of which are very important. But the thing is, only lawyers can do the pro bono legal work that we're talking about. And so be able to kind of set up procedures in which people can, get the training or education that they need to take on certain matters, that they, bring people together who can work on it, whether it's law students working with lawyers or associates working with partners in law firms, whatever it is, or if there's a public private kind of partnership, sometimes, people from different environments work together in legal clinics. But whatever you can kind of do to bring people together, and, to address those issues in your community and to really promote the role that lawyers can play, that pro bono work that is unique to the profession itself. It's great to do public service work, and I'm very involved in public service as well, and we encourage it in my firm and my friends and things like that. But we've got to kind of make sure that we're taking care of the legal needs as much as we can. The access to justice gap is tremendous in all the states across our country. But lawyers are the ones who can really address that gap and try to bridge it in their own communities.
Jonathan, you're talking about access to justice. And from what we're seeing across the country, and I think what you're probably hearing and we're hearing at the NCBP, is that judges are seeing AI throughout pleadings, everybody who represents themselves or one side that's represented, which, in one side can be said is great because people are able to go to court and bring pleadings and do things through Google or ChatGPT or whatever else. But it's also causing problems because it may not always be accurate and people are presenting pleadings that are full of hallucinations. And this is just one little piece of what maybe access to justice is, what's happening access to justice with AI. There's another piece of what's happening across the country with law and lawyers and working AI into their practice. And I'm wondering, as you're seeing perhaps resolutions about AI or seeing discussions about task forces, if you have some vision you can share with us as leaders across the country about maybe where we're going or what strategies the ABA is taking to help us get there.
Well, I can tell you on a firsthand basis, from the House of Delegates ourselves, we're worried that to make sure that we have firsthand work product. And so, the House passed a rule last year to, for people who are submitting resolutions to certify that, that it's their own work product. They can use AI, but they need to check things just like we would do, pleading in court. And so that's one thing of kind of making sure that that the information is being presented in a valid manner, that we can rely upon. Because once we pass a policy in the House of Delegates, that's something that we go forward on, and our governmental affairs office might use it in terms of engaging with Congress or the courts about a rule change or a change in the law. And we've got to make sure that, frankly, it is something that reflects some personal work product, that people have verified the information there. But just more of a bigger picture. Obviously, AI is having a great impact on our profession, and we don't know exactly, what's it going to cause for us, how the impact is going to be at the end of the day. As we've kind of seen some of these things come on, I mean, amazingly, I started practicing law really before the internet was that big of a thing. I tell our younger associates that sometimes, and I feel like I'm saying I practiced before we had telephones or something like that. But, an email came on, and each of those changed it to some degree, right? But we need to make sure that that we use it in a responsible manner, and we're not not relying on it just to as an excuse or something that takes place of the analysis that lawyers can provide. So I believe the ABA and some of our policies, and frankly, this is an evolving thing, is trying to make sure that it's a resource, a tool that's used in the right way, but doesn't kind of come in and supplement or replace the analysis that lawyers would provide the situation. So just like we've seen, frankly, the internet and everything else that's come along, if it's used the right way, lawyers can be much more effective and make a greater difference. But we don't want people just trying to use it to kind of get by, to replace things that they would normally do in the analysis that they would provide for something.
So, Jonathan, since you are such a wide-regarded mentor, people love talking about everything you do for them. Who mentored you?
Wow, that's a great question. I'll tell you, there's a president that I worked with, Robert Gray, who's still around from
Yeah.
Virginia, just an outstanding man. One of the people that have always inspired me. Whenever I hear him speak, to a group or on the floor of the House of Delegates, it's really incredible what he's done. But getting involved in the bar, I'll tell you, the first NCBP president I worked with was Jim Nolan out of Annapolis, Maryland. Just a fantastic fellow, kind of set a great standard of being involved. You could have a good time and really make some real contributions to our profession. And so working with him, working with other leaders like Fred Urey, Carol
Yeah.
Corbin Walker, Carl
Yeah.
Smallwood, and then people kind of followed me like Chris Hickey and Jennifer Parent. People have really inspired me in terms of how you can make a difference, how you can really contribute, and do some great work. And so that's what I really loved. So basically, kind of all along the way, I've been so fortunate to work with some great leaders across our association and NCBP itself.
If we were to create this NCBP wall of greats, like who would go to the NCBP Hall of Fame? You just mentioned like many of the top leaders who have been presidents, who have worked their way through NCBP, who have been on executive council, who have continued to lead after their time after council. And I appreciate you saying that, because we often talk about an NCBP being a president for a year, but a leader for life, and that you may go through your state bar presidency, you may work into the NCBP, and then you go on to do even greater things. Jonathan, you're an example of that, as is Jennifer Parent and Nate Alder and Karen Corbin Walker and all the people that you mentioned. And maybe that leads into this. What's next for you? Where does a former state bar president, a former NCBP bar president, a House Delegates chair go? Because you look to me way, way, way too young to retire or to give up on leadership. So what do we see coming from you?
No, I have a lot of things I hope I can continue to contribute. I'll tell you on the ABA front, when I finish my position, and I'll tell you, it's significant. Another incredible person who came after me, but my successor as chair of the House is another former NCBP president, Aurora Arriaga. And
That's
Aurora
right.
and I
Yes.
have buddies since young lawyer days. but she's going to be very exciting. So I'm really excited. And so I'm really happy to kind of hand off the gavel to her. I know we've had former NCBP presidents who've been chairs of the House in previous years, but this might be the first time we've had a one former president hand off to another one.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited there and happy to do anything I can to help her. I will also, I'm going to step into the role of chairing ABA Day in Washington, which is the ABA's main lobbying effort to engage with members of Congress, both representatives and senators, about some of the issues important. Usually it's funding for legal services and other things important to the profession. And so I'll be really active involved in that. And I'll tell you, I also, haven't had a chance to be as involved here in my local community in the last few years with my duties in the ABA. So I love being working in the nonprofit sector. I'm just became chair of the YMCA of Middle Tennessee, something that I've been involved with for several decades. And so doing that and a couple other things along with some of the other ABA stuff, that's what I'm looking towards being involved. And I'll tell you, I think things, there's some challenging times ahead for the ABA. We're in tough times, but our leadership coming up, Barbara Howard, Laura Farber, then after that, Gene Vance, some great leaders that I've had a chance to work with. And so I'm here to support them, anything I can do to assist their years kind of leading our association. I think it's very exciting, some of the things that are going to happen. We've been challenged a lot. We've been faced with a lot of adversity, frankly, in the last few years. But I believe there's a great opportunity for us to show that this is the reason that you're involved in the bar, that joining together, standing up for the rule of law, saying what the rule of law is. And as Patrick, as you mentioned, some people use that term for things I don't think most of us in the profession would agree is the rule of law. And so defining that for our fellow citizens and talking about those issues, sometimes this may be the most important time ever to be part of the ABA and the profession as a whole. And so anything I can do to help that is something I'm looking forward to.
Jonathan, what advice do you have for lawyers who want to follow in your footsteps?
I think the key is to do something you really believe in. And I think there's so many opportunities. Obviously, I believe that the bar is a key place for people to make a difference. And so I think you need to find where it is in the local or the state or the national organization where you can make the greatest contribution. And that might change from year to year. And so finding those things that you're passionate about, that you really believe in, I think that's the important thing that I would encourage people to do. Not just take a position because it's prestigious or it's going to sound good. Do something that you really want to do, because we all have to make sacrifices, both from our families and from our full-time jobs in order to do great work in the bar. And so it needs to be something that you really believe in, that you're passionate about, and you'll make the greatest contribution. So that, I think that's the key thing, to find those places that really drive you, that when you wake up at night, that you feel like I can really do something here and get you excited. And that's the important thing to do going forward.
At the risk of asking one question too many, because I think that's a perfect place to end this podcast, Amanda, I'm gonna throw it in there anyway. I'm wondering how you would describe your term as NCBP president. How important was being part of the executive council and running this organization for your journey and your success as a bar leader?
It was so important to me. I mean, I just finding out, what's going on around the country, what's important to people and their constituents, their bar members and their environments. And I was so amazed all on the time, each year when I was on council and then as I went through the leadership ranks, meeting different bar presidents, and not just the ones that were on council with us. I mean, just ones I'd interact with at the NCBP meetings, of amazing work that's going on. And so finding a way that we can support it, share those ideas, but then also, providing that emotional support for each other, because it's not easy, doing that, finding the time to really be a great bar president. And so I was always inspired by the people literally from all across the country who have done incredible things, made great differences in their communities. And we found out, finding ways that we can kind of share that and, repeat some of the great successes all across our country.
Yeah, perfect. Jonathan, thank you. And I'm blessed to have this great partner in Amanda for this podcast, but I appreciate all of your efforts and work that you have done for the ABA and for the NCBP, for your state and local bars. Your leadership's inspirational to all of us. And we look forward to seeing where you go from here. And you know what? We're right behind you.
Thank you, Patrick. It's been great. I've always loved NCBP. It's been a fantastic this year under your leadership, some incredible things that you've done. And so I think you've made it, put it in a position to even achieve greater things in the years to come. So thank you for your leadership. Appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today.
If you want to hear more from Jonathan or Patrick, you can join us at the NCBP annual meeting in Chicago from July 30th through August 1st. On behalf of the National Conference for Bar Presidents, thank you for watching this episode of Leading the Bar. For more information about membership or getting involved, or attending our annual meeting, visit ncbp.org.